Welcome to the Scariest Things podcast, your gateway to the tropes and trends of the horror genre. This is Mike Campbell, joined by
Eric Lee
and
Liz Williams.
And tonight we are talking about psychological horror. We did talk just recently, and I'm gonna blank on the episode, but it was the Americans with Disabilities Act episode where we kind of touched a little bit on that concept. Although I think we leaned a little bit more heavily on physical disabilities. Although psychological disabilities are indeed covered by the Americans with Disabilities Act. Certainly not something that, certainly not something we should overlook, which is why we're giving psychological horror its own podcast, because there is a rich and mighty tradition of psychological horror that goes back all the way.
It's the backbone of horror.
It goes back all the way to the very, very, very beginning. Although you could argue that sort of disabilities like the Hunchback of Notre Dame or the Phantom of the Opera. I mean, those are obviously
physical and
maybe a little mental too.
Mental. I think they would have. Yeah, poor Quasimodo had all kinds of wrong going on with him.
This is true. Poor Quasimodo. Poor Quasimodo. What were there any characteristics for psychological horror that jumped out, or any sort of pre-filtering that you did, Liz, like as you were thinking about this?
A little bit. So I went, and I didn't really think of it as psychological, like characters' minds, although all three of my movies do have people with a little bit of psychological problems. But I kind of also approached it from, like, at least in the publishing industry, they always say that, like, any horror book that critics like, they dub a psychological thriller.
Right.
Because it kind of makes that seem more legit than horror. So all of my picks, even though they do have people with some psychological I'll say issues, are kind of lighter on the horror side.
Right.
I think that a lot of times things that get lumped in with psychological horror they veer more towards the thriller.
Yep.
And less to the just blood and guts and visceral gore, because they are either psychological because it's inside of a character's mind, or it's a cat and mouse serial killer type thing. So they're not lowercase horror, but they're definitely less visceral horror.
Yep.
Or it can be.
Actually, they're more my wheelhouse than creature features and things like that. So
I had to make sure that there was a nut house in every single one of my films. that was my threshold. If there's a nut house, it's psychological horror. I took a very literal approach to the assignment. Eric, what about you?
None of my people are in the nut house, but
Well, yeah,
should they be though? Should they be
Yes.
in the nut house? Okay, we do know that they should be in the nut house.
So, relative to how I was filtering this, because you can interpret it so many ways.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I went with movies that people are having to deal with they're knowingly trying to deal with their conditions or resisting against the conditions. These aren't the people who are so far gone like your Michael Myers,
sure,
which are just the homicidal sociopaths.
Right.
That this is
Which is
something.
I wouldn't even lump him in with that. I mean, we know he's not.
Yeah. I mean, he escaped from the nut house, but
I think
is pure evil a psychological malady?
Yeah, psychopath versus psychological are a little bit different for me when I think of them that way.
No, I do too.
Right. And, I think that it was where the actual mental illness is front and center within the story. They actually these tend to be, as Liz was saying, thriller, horror or not kind of things that are on the border, because they often don't deal with the supernatural, but sometimes what they see or believe in goes to the fantastic.
Sure.
Right.
And, and then there's some Lovecraftian things which go full on cosmic.
Right.
I think that's,
we might be getting there.
Might be another.
We might be getting there.
This is going to be interesting. It sounds like we're not going to have any crossover. We all seem to have picked different things, or what film, if we do cross, would have crossed those boundaries. Interesting.
Very interesting.
So,
Very interesting.
Mike, what was your take on this?
Because I already told you. Nut house had to be a nut house.
Simple enough.
The people had to be crazy. The main characters. Mm-hmm. There had to be an obvious sort of like psychological evaluation or self-evaluation of those people to certify them as crazy. And for tonight's purposes, we're not using crazy in the pejorative per se. We're using crazy as a general descriptor for these deep, dark psychological maladies.
Yes.
So
Right.
So it had to be that, and then it had to be. I always felt like, I think that's such a great piece, and it's such a stalwart. It's such a foundational piece to horror, is the concept of the insane asylum, whether it's an abandoned insane asylum, whether it's a functioning insane asylum, because what it really speaks to is your inability to relate to these, like profound psychological problems. And a lot of people, when you see that, it's so off-putting and so dark and so frightening because you don't know what's going on in their minds, and you see these people who are obviously sick and suffering, and you just go, "Oh my God, my brain does not know how to process what they're going through." Therefore, it's frightening and terrifying.
Did you pick any where the actual where you get sort of the internal expression of the illness, so that you can't tell whether what you're seeing is actually part of the plot or not?
Oh, yeah.
That is a classic thing for psychological.
I think almost in all of them.
Yes.
I think almost in all of them, it had kind of a piece or a part to that. But yeah, that for me, that was the big thing, was like, because that's always been something, and I don't know why that is, but that's always been something that's kind of like stuck under my craw, is that people, persons, et cetera, mental health facilities obviously are lacking in this country, and our care and empathy for those people is also lacking. And when I see it, up close and personal, it is terrifying. It is a terrifying thing. And so that's what I primarily leaned on when I was thinking about psychological horror.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Mike, you want to lead off?
I sure will. I'm going to start with a Criterion Collection film that was originally released in 1972 under the title Blood Sisters. Of course, this later was recast as Sisters. This is the 1972 Brian De Palma film starring the Margot Kidder, rest in peace, and Charles Durning was in this film as well. Yeah. Great film. Margot Kidder plays two people. She plays her sister, and she plays her sister, Danielle and Dominique. And the story behind Danielle and Dominique is that they were a very, very prominent a couple of French-Canadian sisters that were conjoined twins, and they were separated at birth. And one of the twins was good, and one of the twins was evil.
That's a fantastic trope.
It is a fantastic trope.
The evil twin.
The evil twin. Now, why? I still don't know, and I tried to research this to figure out why they chose it as why the plot was focused on the fact that Danielle and Dominique were French Canadian, because it basically put Margot Kidder in this spot of having to do this French Canadian accent, which mostly she did pretty good, but sometimes I was like, I'm not sure that's French. Like, that's like
French-ish.
It was French-ish. It was like if I was doing, French? Like if I was doing a French Canadian accent. Which is the thing. The other thing that's really cool about this film is that Brian De Palma, this was not his first film, because he actually did quite a few films in the 1960s. But he, of course, as we all know now, was absolutely 110% Hitchcock obsessed, and he leaned on Rope in this film. He leaned on Rear Window. He leaned on Psycho. He drew from The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. And he went so far as to actually have Bernard Herrmann, the guy who scored Psycho, score this film. So, I mean, he was really, really like, he in a really studied way, I guess. He pulled all the best pieces and parts from Hitchcock and then turned in kind of a psychedelic rumination on on the psychoses of these two conjoined twins. The film is the film is none more simple than the one sister, the good sister, she connects up with the African American gentleman one evening. They go back to her place, and then it turns out that the evil sister Dominique is in the house. She kills the African American gentleman that Danielle was with. And all of this is the Rear Window part, all of this was witnessed by the next door neighbor, who is a budding young reporter from the local Staten Island penny pincher daily. And she decides to take it upon herself to figure out what's what. And she gets wrapped up in this to the point where there's a great scene where she ends up eventually finding the insane asylum where they've been treating Danielle and Dominique were previously housed. She goes there, and then she is inadvertently committed to the insane asylum as she's trying to piece apart the story behind Danielle and Dominique. There are some really amazing point of view shots in this film. He uses split screen.
Yeah, he does that and believe it or not, I can say this now. He does that in Carrie as well.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, so he does like lots of point of view stuff. He does lots of split screen, like lots and lots and lots of split screen, which in this case is really interesting because he's literally like splitting the screen between like one person in a room and then another person coming around the corner. So you're seeing both perspectives at the same time. And then there's a couple tracking shots. There's one tracking shot in particular that's almost 6 minutes in length. It's a really, really interesting film because it does focus on all of the it does focus on the psychology. It also focuses, interestingly, film critic and scholar Robin Wood wrote that the film analyzes the ways in which women are oppressed within the patriarchy society on two levels: the professional, Grace, and then the psychosexual, Danielle and Dominique. And he gets at a lot of different things in the film. But I liked it because he does toy around with the idea of psychology in the context of the conjoined twins, which is interesting because then you got this sort of like binary separation between the two things, where it's like it's clearly he's putting this demarcation of good and evil as a part of the psychology, which makes, I think, for a lot of audiences, it makes it a lot easier to process that in your brain.
So. I think it's interesting that it's Margot Kidder, who is the lead here, because as is reasonably well known, Margot Kidder had some actual psychoses that she had to deal with over her life.
Yeah.
Did you know? Do you know what her, was it schizophrenia that she had?
I think it was. Yeah, I think it was something in that ballpark. Yeah.
It kind of derailed her career.
It did.
After I think Superman 2. And then all of a sudden, she slid off into some fairly disabling mental issues.
Yeah, the other actress that's in the film, Jennifer Salt, who plays the budding young reporter, she didn't go on to do much else after this either. She did a bunch of stuff in the 60s and then a couple things with Brian De Palma in the early 70s, and then she was kind of done. She stayed involved. I think she stayed involved with the film industry and she stayed involved with writing and everything, but then after that she was done. So moral of this story is don't be in a Brian De Palma film because he might just break you.
Or a Kubrick movie.
Yes. But Brian De Palma, if you're listening, we would love to have you on the Scariest Things podcast because I think you are a very talented director.
We will be in your movie.
Yes.
Absolutely.
All right, Liz, what do you got for your number 3 on your terrible trio list?
I'm going to start with the movie that I think of. It's my go-to if I think of psychological horror, and it's 1965's Roman Polanski film, Repulsion.
Yes.
I think this is kind of like, setting the bar, in my opinion, for this kind of movie. So this film we get dropped kind of in the middle, and we meet Carol, who's played by the stunning Catherine Deneuve. And she is a French girl living in London. She works as an esthetician and does nails at a posh salon. She's kind of quiet. The first scene, she's spacing out, and the lady who she's giving a manicure to asks her if she falls asleep. So she's got these dreamy eyes and never really focused on anything. So you automatically know, something's up with Carol. Then she has a boyfriend named Colin, who's a very handsome gentleman, but seems to want to take things to the next level. And she's just, not really into it. And she lives with her sister, Helen.
Her sister. She was a hoot.
Her sister Helen, who's kind of she's a free-spirited young lady, and she has a married boyfriend named Michael, who, she's about to go out of town with to Italy on a trip that's probably about 2 weeks long. So Carol is going to be home alone, and things do not work out well for Carol while she's home alone. On the first, before they even go out of town, it's a big mistake. Well, so Michael, Helen's boyfriend, had said, like, your sister probably needs to see a doctor. And Helen was like, what are you talking about? So I don't know if she just, was really oblivious, or, was just focused on herself and not even seeing her, little sister's actual mental problems. But so other people saw it, and just Helen didn't seem to, and thought it was a good idea to leave her by herself.
Well, I think
so.
I got the impression that Helen her little sister was driving her a little crazy. I mean,
she
wanted to.
She lives there. She has the boyfriend who's over, and Carol's saying things like, why is he putting his toothbrush next to my cup in the bathroom? And, so a little bit of
neurotic
OCD
behavior,
you're seeing, but I probably would agree with that.
Yeah. I think you sense that they were sort of in these close confines, and it was like, I need some time to myself.
Right.
And I got to get out of here, as opposed to what's in the best interest of my sister, who was just on the border of just completely shattering.
Right.
Well, leaving her alone was not in the best interest of her boyfriend Colin, nor their landlord, or a rabbit that they were going to cook for dinner.
That's right.
Which is one of the grossest things. It's a super weird film too. It is, you're dropped right into it. You don't really know anything about their past. There's some kind of insinuations of things that may have happened to Carol from a little bit of, I guess, what would be, we don't know if they're flashbacks. I think that they were flashbacks because they show her in a room and she has a lamp that looks like a childlike lamp. So I was thinking there were flashbacks. And they also show like one.
I think in her past. I think there were strong inferences of that.
Yeah,
but they don't.
And
they don't
one weird family picture.
No. Yeah,
but there's a lot of suggestions.
Okay.
And so I think to Liz's point, I think you sort of have to kind of piece together what you want out of it to determine if she's what has broken her. Was she, because she also she may have been raped.
That's what she may have been, but you're never quite sure. She's very repulsed by mature sexual advances, even from her boyfriend. So not just by strangers on the street, even though there are strangers on the street, there are these, the landlord is a super creep. So given that if we knew then what we know now about Roman Polanski, this is a very strange film and a very strange, I was like, I personally haven't had any experience with men like that, luckily for me, but I was like, this is just really weird. But I don't know if they were just showing it to show her repulsion. But it has some really cool effects, like the walls of their apartment cracking. And one time she leans up against it and her hand kind of goes in and it looks like the wall's almost made of like a silly putty type consistency. So it's a beautiful film, and it's the classic mental illness film in my book.
It's the standard bearer.
It is.
I think particularly but I also liked how it starts with small little neurotic things and then goes full blown psychosis.
Right, it goes full blown psychosis after about her sister being gone. So she stays home for 3 days, doesn't go to work, then goes back into work and is not all there and is sent home. So it takes about 4 days of her being by herself to have a full on mental breakdown. And it does not go well for the people in her life who are trying to help her, or trying to, at least her boyfriend just wants to see her, and it doesn't work out for old
really
Colin.
Does not work out for him.
It does not.
No. Yeah, you do got to wonder whether or not whether or not some of this was like self-aware on his part, like dealing with some of these, the issues that he would later contend with. I mean, I know he was obviously
I don't know.
became famous for rape, but he was, I mean, by all accounts, he is a really creepy dude, and he continues to be a very creepy dude. So you gotta wonder whether or not any of this was like either self-loathing, or at least at the very least self-aware that he was, contending with some of these deep, dark psychological issues.
Exactly. Watching it now is different than probably watching it when it came out in 1965, knowing what we know now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's like watching a Woody Allen film. You go, "Oh my Lord, there's
right.
a lot out here that I should have been aware of."
Process
we need to unpack some stuff, but I'm not going to get into that now. It would be a much longer podcast.
Yeah, well, it was for someone who acted as more than hard to get,
right?
But I think Catherine Deneuve is so pretty, that it's like that guys would do, they will do anything to get her to fall in love with them, even if she is a total more than a cold fish. She's afraid, of people, and she's constantly ditching appointments and just sort of obfuscating, and even the little, it's like, how about one step at a time kind of stuff. She's even shrugging that off. It's like, dude, she's not into you. And
she doesn't want to meet you for dinner. She doesn't want to do that. And her boyfriend at one point, she's on the other side of the door in her apartment. It's locked. He breaks down her door. He's not concerned for her, because then he goes in there and he's like, I just wanted to see you. And you're like, I don't. It's a very strange. So I don't know if you're supposed to kind of side with her, that she should have, that he kind of got what he deserved. I don't know. It's kind of a,
it's
I don't
complex.
know. Makes you think.
Complex
it's a thinker.
And I think Repulsion has fallen out of copyright protection too, if I'm not mistaken. It's a pretty easy get to find a copy of Repulsion these days. You might even be able to the
Criterion. You get the Criterion.
I got the DVD from our library because it's Criterion Collection, and it has a really cool booklet that's got a lot of write-ups about the film and some extra bonus features.
Yep. All right. So we got two Criterion films so far. Let's see what if Eric picked a trauma film.
No, it's not. This one's sort of a horror tragedy.
Oh, horror tragedy.
And
that doesn't sound fun.
It might have a Criterion out there. It's a more current movie, but this is 1990s Jacob's Ladder.
Oh, okay.
It may have. This is interesting. This is a film that I've seen it, but I can't. I mean, I couldn't tell you anything about it. I didn't care for it.
It is
interesting. I didn't get it. Maybe.
I think when I asked Mike about whether he picked any movies where the perspective of the protagonist becomes sort of mixes in with what you're seeing as an audience member.
Right.
This one that is very true for Jacob's Ladder.
Right. Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So this is it's a 1990 movie by Adrian Lyne starring Tim Robbins as Jacob.
What else did Adrian Lyne do?
I think you IMDb that
we'll
one.
We'll get back to you on that one.
But so Jacob, the opening sequence of Jacob's Ladder is a firefight in Vietnam, where things go completely haywire, and Jacob ends up getting guillotined in the gut. Oof. And at that point, it flashes forward, and he's on a subway. And he's earning a job in New York as a postal postman.
Right.
And as he's falling asleep and he's having flashbacks to his trauma, and so this is definitely a sort of PTSD is part of this in a very large way. Also,
let me pop in real quick. What else Adrian Lyne has directed?
All right,
he has directed Fatal Attraction.
What?
9.5 Weeks.
What?
And Flashdance.
Oh my! Wow,
stylish.
Not someone new to the game.
Yeah.
So 9.5 Weeks and Fatal Attraction. There we are, a little psychological
thrillers.
Yeah.
Thriller on those.
That is a director who is parked firmly in a very specific
And then after Jacob's Ladder, he did Unfaithful, which was also a sexy psychological thriller, and Indecent Proposal.
Another sexy.
Wow.
Yeah,
that was a terrible movie.
Yeah.
He was big on. Yeah, we might have to do a sub genre podcast to the psychological thriller, the sexy psychological thriller.
Sexy psychological thriller.
Yes, that is. I mean, there are plenty to pick from.
There sure are.
Yeah, but this is not a sexy psychological thriller. Jacob's Ladder is so he starts on this subway train ride. He's getting flashbacks, and then he realizes he misses his stop, and it's late night. He hops off the train because he doesn't know where his stop is, so he gets off at a strange stop. He starts seeing things out of the corner of his eyes, that there's something weird happening with people. He thinks that he might be followed. He feels like that there are things that are not true, there were doors that he believed there should have been, or ways to get out of the subway, and it just doesn't make sense. Why is this thing closed off for me? And so he almost gets hit by a train. So that's the opening sequence, and it sort of establishes that he's a man who's sort of still struggling with his demons, and then the demons become more literal as he starts feeling like he's being pursued. He's seeing people. Well, he is being pursued by
monsters.
Yeah, but he goes to try and check in with his psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist apparently isn't there anymore. And he tries to figure out why, and he gets past the orderlies, and he breaks into the office in a sort of in a chase moment. And then they said, "Oh no, your doctor, he died last month." They said, "Well, what happens?" "Oh, it was a car accident." It's like, "Car accident?" "Well, actually, the car exploded." Like, well, okay, that's a little different. And then, but he is seeing the visions that he has of the demons. He'll be looking at someone, and then their head will vibrate violently from side to side, and it's very disturbing. It's one of those. It is that is like a patented move. I think it's the first time we've seen that the vibration of for something that's out of the ordinary.
Right.
I think it's been used. I think.
Oh my God! Now it's like that's standard.
Like
that's standard stuff.
So when you see them vibrate and shift into morph into things.
Right.
But and so he's been divorced recently because of his traumas.
Right.
He also, in addition to being a Vietnam War veteran, he also lost his little boy, played by Macaulay Culkin.
Oh wow!
Who was killed on the street playing on his bicycle. It got run over.
This movie has literally got 1990 all over it.
It is. This is baptized in 1990 waters.
I was Glenn
and the writer who wrote this script also wrote Ghost, also from 1990.
Wow. So
yeah.
And
Demi Moore was originally cast. No,
I think there's a woman named Elizabeth Pena who plays his new girlfriend.
That's
Jezzy. Who is she's unlikable. She is.
Right.
She's always like her new boyfriend has got issues. He wakes up crying and he's seeing things and he's turning inward, and to the point where it's hard for him to function. She yells at him, and tries to like burn up all his old photographs and things like to try and so that he doesn't associate things, so that he'll go and be normal.
Right.
As opposed to being actually someone who's nurturing and comforting and trying to get him through it. She yells at him. So he is in a world of issues in this sort of sketchy New York tenement. I mean, I think this is before New York kind of cleaned up and became the hipster place that it is now.
Pre Giuliani.
Yeah.
Because it's set in the 70s, right?
Late 70s, early 80s.
Early 80s.
Right.
So they do a good job of recapturing that ugly side of New York.
Now, have you watched it recently? Did you watch it like this week or something?
I watched it before this.
Okay. And it holds up pretty well?
It does.
Does
it really does.
Okay.
I think that it's weird to see some people like Jason Alexander shows up as a skeezy lawyer.
Right.
You got Ving Rhames and Eric LaSalle, who is in
my
ER.
God, really?
They play his war buddies.
Right.
And eventually, what happens is he learns that some of his war buddies suffered the same kind of thing, and then they go, "There's something going on," and that's when they go to the skeezy lawyer to try and do something about it. And then eventually, the skeezy lawyer, Jason Alexander, goes, "No, I can't help you.
Right,
go away. You guys are causing me problems." And it's like, "Well, what's going on?" There's a cover up. Right?
Yeah,
there was something. There
right.
was some.
Right.
That's one of the
not Jason Alexander's first horror film either.
No, because he was in The Burning.
The Burning, yeah.
As a young man. But this one, The ending is the Jacob's ladder has several meanings. It was almost a little bit too ham-fisted in the description of of tying the story to the character to the linguistics of it all.
Yeah.
And
it takes a pretty literal approach. I remember being frustrated by that when I watched it originally.
It's like it's a Jacob's ladder.
Right.
But this movie has it also shifts your point of view. All of a sudden you're in a hospital, and then the hospital gets to be an asylum.
Right.
And then the asylum starts having body parts lying all over the place. And you're going, what's going on? Is he really in a super sketchy asylum, or is this a reflection of what his madness is doing? And that's what you eventually go to. And then you go, is he dead? Or is he dying?
Right.
Is he?
So
what is this?
So it is a nut house. So you do get to the nut house.
Yeah, and there is actually a literal nut house in it. And I think this was an excellent portrayal by Tim Robbins. It's a depressing movie. It's a real downer.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I remember watching it. Yeah, being really, really dark.
It's super dark.
Yeah.
And it's got powerful imagery. The narrative is kind of hard to hold on to. It's pretty slippery, and I think that's partly because of the madness involved.
Yep. All right.
I'd say it's certainly a good watch and very representational of early '90s. I think this and Seven,
sure,
I think are sort of in the same kind of the feel.
Yeah.
Might need to give it another shot.
Kind of dark, kind of gritty.
That's my number 3.
All right, go see Jacob's Ladder. Or Mike. Not. The film, my number 2, film the main character in the film, Sawyer Valentini, quote, utters this line in the film, "I am not fucking crazy."
I love it.
Which to me is kind of like,
I say that all the time.
Right, I know that's, but I mean to me that's kind of like that's the ground level. That's the foundation of all these psychological horror films. I'm not crazy. And the character actually utters this film in the 2018 psychological, not sexy psychological horror film Unsane, directed by Steven Soderbergh. And I've talked a little bit about.
I think this is going to be one of Mike's all-time favorite movies.
I know.
It definitely is. I mean, it definitely made my 2018 list. But to me, this really gets at so much of the mental health system in the United States today. Obviously, it's an allegory for, all the problems that we're facing with and how much control insurance companies have in the meddling of the healthcare system. This was a film that was directed by Steven Soderbergh, obviously written by Jonathan Bernstein and James Greer. It stars Claire Foy and of course Jay Farrow from Saturday Night Live and Juno Temple. It also stars Amy Irving as Claire Foy's mom, as Sawyer's mom. But
Amy Irving. Wow.
I know. Okay. She's still at it. The film was shot, believe it or not. This is the thing that I'm so, to me it's almost kind of like it's inspiring that it was shot in 10 days. On an iPhone 7 using a film app called Filmic. It was obviously shot in 4K because that's when iPhone moved to be able to shoot 4K. Shot in 10 days on an iPhone 7 for $1.2 million. That
is so Steven Soderbergh.
And I'm like, and it's an awesome film. That's the thing that's so amazing about the film. And I keep going back to that. And I have watched it again. I've watched it twice now. And there's a couple little pieces and parts in the film where you go, that actually looks like it's shot on an iPhone. But for the most part, it doesn't really look like it's shot on an iPhone. And I think that's the cleverness and the creativity of Steven Soderbergh, the way he's able to think through and work through all these different shots so that it doesn't create that appearance. But basically it involves it. The thing that I also really like about this film is that it involves somebody who's psychologically on the edge. And she is obviously had some prior mental health issues that they go deeper into, which I'm not going to explain why they go deeper into or how they go deeper into it, because that's a massive spoiler for the film. But she goes and decides to engage the healthcare system at the behest of her mom, Amy Irving, and then unwittingly, inadvertently, she commits herself to a 24-hour sort of observation, or it's 24 or 48-hour observation.
It turns into
a lifetime.
Whoops.
So what I love about the film is that the psychology in this case, or the broken psychology in this case, is really just the entry point into the horror. It's not the horror itself. The horror it's the inability of the healthcare system to actually process people in a functional way. What she does is she's obviously got some issues, and the issues are compounded further on by the thing I won't really talk about because I don't want to spoil the film. Mm-hmm. But what really makes the film horrifying is her going into the healthcare system and trying to access the healthcare system, because she's very well. I can't remember what she does for a living. She's involved in the financial industry, so she's got good insurance. She's got a good paycheck. She's doing well for herself. She's a fully functioning professional who's got some psychological issues from the past. So it's not like she doesn't have access to all this stuff. Right. But as soon as she does access it, all hell falls apart. And you think, yeah, I mean that's the horror.
Is this my preferred provider?
Right.
What's going on? What's my deductible on something like a permanent homestay?
Right. Can I get a deferral can I get referred to a specialist, please?
What happens if we get Medicare for all? Am I covered?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean Steven Soderbergh, he does I think he does a great job in exploring all those things. Because it is, at the end of the day, I mean, what he's presenting to you is a pretty hyper-political realization of the complexities of the healthcare system and why everything is broken and why insurance companies wield so much power over our healthcare decision-making, but more importantly, why healthcare providers and insurance companies wield so much power over psychological issues and mental health issues, which is like, mental health is bad enough as it is, and then you're compounding that by having to sort of, walk yourself through the maze of, forms and drugs and other crazy people and everything else in between. And so, yeah, it's a good film. I would really recommend folks do see it, if nothing else, just to take in kind of the creativity of Steven Soderbergh. I did mention that this was shot at in all the films I'm going to be talking about.
In a nut house.
In a nut house, in a hospital. The hospital this one was filmed at was in Pomona, New York. It was the Summit Park Hospital, and the Summit Park Hospital, according to the internet, has recently closed. Ooh. So we might have to do a special live podcast from the Summit Park Hospital in New York.
How limber are you? Do you think you can scramble over a barbed wire fence?
Yeah, if I had to. There you go. Yes.
Bolt cutters. Don't you watch TV? Someone's got to bring bolt cutters. There you go. Cut our way through the fence. Right. We're getting
so Liz will be the brains of the operation.
Yep.
All right. So yeah, go see Unsane. It is worth your while. Liz, what do you got for your number 2?
Okay, so to, be like the cream filling in my 2 really good movie cookie sandwich, I have something that is not great, but one that I still love fits in our genre. It also earned the main actress a Best Dressed award at the MTV Movie Awards in 2000.
Oh,
and
that's
it
essential.
Is the Tarsem Singh movie, The Cell, from 2000.
Oh, yeah, right.
J-Lo, isn't
it?
Yeah.
J-Lo.
Yeah, it's Jennifer Lopez, Vincent D'Onofrio, and Vince Vaughn. This is 2000 in a little package with a bow around it. And it is kind of a ripoff of Silence of the Lambs, but Roger Ebert the year it came out gave it 4 out of 4 stars and said put it on its top 10 for 2000.
That Roger Ebert can be all over the map sometimes.
Yes, he was.
Totally. But this is one of those literally in quotes movies that everybody calls visually stunning. It is. It's gorgeous. So this movie is about a child psychologist named Catherine, played by Jennifer Lopez, who is using this new technology where she attaches neurotransmitters to her head and someone else's head to go inside the mind of, in the beginning, it's made for coma patients to help them come out of comas. But we have a killer who is schizophrenic, who has a victim in a tank that every hour is filling with water. So we've got to find out where she is. So how will we know what the killer is thinking? We got to use this technology to get inside his mind. So J-Lo, of course, is up for the challenge with the help of Vince Vaughn, FBI agent, who is watching it now. These characters kind of don't hold up, but still looks really good. Seeing Vince Vaughn with his little baby face as a FBI agent, I don't know. And it's very, very 2000. It is.
Well, this
really
was J-Lo. This was J-Lo at her peak.
The apex. Although apparently her new movie is doing really well.
What is her new movie?
Well, she looks literally exactly the same. It's been almost 20 years and good. I mean, except for her hair.
Yeah, J-Lo, I think her stage routine keeps her nice and fit.
She is ageless.
She's fit. Yeah. She's super fit. But so this is really, it takes place inside the mind of Vincent D'Onofrio, who is the killer, named Carl Starger. And it's gorgeous because it's all fantasy. It's inside a schizophrenic mind, so nothing has to actually make sense. Mm-hmm. So she's kind of going in there to uncover his inner child and help free him, and also get the location of where this girl is being held. And it has a really cool scene where, and definitely the Hannibal team used this later, some panes of glass come down from the ceiling and slice a horse up into science things where it would be on the, what's the name of the little glass that you would put under a microscope, like a specimen.
Petri dish.
So you can, Petri dish. You can see on both sides. It's really cool. It's gorgeous. It's not a great movie, though. I'm not gonna lie.
Well,
plot-wise, it's not great, but it looks really cool, and it definitely fits our bill. And it's worth seeing if you haven't seen it, just for the effects and the art.
Vincent D'Onofrio has made a career out of playing crazy psychotic types. I think.
Sure. Oh my gosh!
Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah, I was going to say from his start in Full Metal Jacket in 1989. Yeah, I mean that was something
and then
else.
The Kingpin that he did for Daredevil.
Yep.
And he's in Men in Black as wasn't he the bug monster from Men in Black?
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah.
So, but Liz, you said even though it is from 2000, which is not all that long ago, it holds up really well in terms of the visuals and everything.
You know what? The images when they're in the mind of the schizophrenic hold up really well. Yeah. But when you're watching it, the characters being regular people, it's completely dated. Okay. Hairstyles, clothing, and just seeing these super famous actors where you know what they look like now.
Right.
It's kind of look at them then. So I don't know. It is kind of a ripoff of Silence of the Lambs. And aside from Roger Ebert, almost everybody else said it's all style over substance, which, sometimes that's okay because it's super stylish.
Let's be honest, too. This was Jennifer Lopez's gateway into one of the greatest films of all time, Anaconda.
Yes,
one of the greatest horror films of all time.
I love Anaconda.
So stupid and so good. I think, yes.
So if not for this film, there would be no Anaconda.
Well,
so kick off your Jennifer Lopez Film Festival with Tar Theme Sings 2000 The Cell.
Yes.
Well,
all right.
I like that this actually is a fairly kind of an interesting segue because if not for the protagonist from my first movie,
Anaconda?
No. From Jacob's Ladder, we would not get my second movie, which is yet to actually hit the full theatrical release, but this is Daniel Isn't Real.
So this has nothing to do with Anaconda.
No, it has nothing to do with Anaconda. I might be able to tie it in. We'll see.
Anaconda 2, Eric?
Yeah. This is
Anacondas.
It's It's a movie directed by Adam Egypt Mortimer,
Right.
who should have get together with Chelsea Stardust to get that
Chelsea
whole,
Stardust,
greatest
Egypt
names in
Mortimer.
directing.
Yep.
But it's still working its way through the film festival circuit.
Oh
We've had
no, you're
multiple
telling
times.
people to go see one of these films that they can't see again.
It's coming out in December. I think December.
It's
1.
coming out soon.
Okay.
But it is starring Miles Robbins, son of Tim Robbins and Susan Sarandon
Of Jacob's Ladder
of
fame.
Jacob's Ladder. It also stars Patrick Schwarzenegger, son of
The governor of California.
yes,
Former governor of California.
and a Kennedy.
And he
So-
did some other stuff too.
Yeah, there's some things. This is, it was really buzzy when we were down in New Orleans, but none of us were able to catch it because there was
There was other cool stuff to see.
overlaid stuff, and I just wasn't able to get around to do it. Then there were some difficulties trying to get screeners, but FilmQuest in Provo, which just finished up, gave me the opportunity to watch this, and it's great.
Cool.
It is
And we have a review.
Yeah, the
up on
review
the
is up,
site.
yeah.
Yes.
So-
And did you do the review, or
That was
did
me, yeah.
Joseph do the review?
this one was me.
Okay. And what did you give it?
I gave it 4.
4 out of 5
4
stars.
out of 5 stars.
That's pretty solid.
It is a story about a young man who was induced into having some neuroses developing into psychoses due to he witnessed a horrific and violent trauma. There was the opening scene of the movie is a holdup of a cafe where some guy comes in and with a shotgun and just it's like it's sort of a movie of our times. This is the active shooter. Some guy goes in with a shotgun and clears out a cafe full of strangers, right? And this boy played by who will be played by Miles,
Right.
Sees this and is traumatized. And at that point he meets there's another little boy there named Daniel. This is Luke is the main protagonist, and he meets this little boy named Daniel. But Daniel is an imaginary friend, and he is also, in addition to the trauma of seeing the aftermath of this shotgun shootout, he also his mother has got some schizophrenia issues, and because she has schizophrenia issues, there's a divorce in the family, and so his father leaves them, and so he's going through all of these layers of traumas, but he's this very imaginative little boy.
Yeah.
And so with Daniel, he's having these fun things they're pretending that they're paratroopers and they're jumping out of airplanes and stuff and storming castles with swords and it's like the ultimate imaginary friend because they're playing off of your desires of what you want to do and what you think of yourself. But one day, Daniel suggests to Luke, it'd be great. Your mom needs a treat. So let's, so he was like, they would do things like, let's fold some paper cranes and that kind of stuff. But one day he says, let's give her this, a milkshake. And they took all of her antipsychotic pills and ground them into the milkshake and gave it to her. Almost kills his mom.
Right.
And she goes, Luke, what'd you do to me? Oh, you used all the money. What do you? And it's like, well, it wasn't me. It was Daniel. Right. It's like, and he goes, Daniel's not real. And then so he eventually banishes.
Do they actually utter the?
The title is in the movie.
I'd have to go back in there, but it was that was paraphrasing. Daniel is in, he's that's like, honey, what are you? You can't. This is. I'm sick. No. And so he manages to banish Daniel into a dollhouse, which seems to be the tool of the times, right? We've seen a lot of dollhouses in movies recently.
A couple movies kicking around.
And so he manages to this little boy gets trapped in the dollhouse, or this imaginary friend gets trapped in the dollhouse. And as Miles is going now, we jump fast forward to his college years. He's now in college, and he's having a hard time meeting girls. He's kind of a recluse. He's a little odd. But he's a handsome kind of gothy looking kid. So there are girls who are interested in him. He just doesn't know how to handle it. and he has a psychologist who he's talking to, and he says, I think that you just need to open up more. And you need to gain some confidence. When was the last time you had confidence? And he goes, well, I was a little boy, and he talks about his imaginary friend. And he's like, well, maybe allow a little bit of that, to come out again. So he releases Daniel from his dollhouse prison, and poof, you get, Patrick Schwarzenegger. Daniel is now this strapping, charismatic, kind of both the angel and the demon on the shoulder. And at first, he's wicked fun. He manages to tells.
Now, is all this unfolding like in the first act of the film?
This is pretty much Act 1 is him as a child. Act 2 is going to college.
Oh, okay.
And so then, it's a maybe 15, 20 minutes worth of him as a child.
Okay.
And then, but he's starting to. It's like now he's good at parties. He's being coaxed into doing some things, and all of a sudden it's like now you can doing some naughty stuff again. And,
right.
But now as an adult best friend,
yeah,
he's encouraged Luke to become a confident individual. Now he's got girlfriend. And all these things.
Right.
And then all of a sudden the evil switch gets flipped, and then what this imaginary friend is actually some sort of a weird alien-like thing. And then morphs, and then all of a sudden you're going, what? Okay, is this a construct of his imagination? What is going on? Is this actually an evil alien construct disguised as Patrick Schwarzenegger? Mm-hmm. And it's a blast. I think that this thing, and it's because the whole notion, you don't see a whole lot of imaginary friend things, but if you're 19 years old, you should not have imaginary friends.
True.
You should kind of be done with that at that point.
And there's always of course, when you have an imaginary friend, what was the Austrian film that we saw?
Mommy.
No.
Good night, mommy.
Good night, mommy.
That's not really an imaginary friend, though.
No.
Spoiler alert! Don't talk about it anymore.
It's along those lines.
Yeah,
they always want you to do bad things. Those imaginary friends, they're never out for good.
Or if you have a conjoined Siamese twin,
right?
Or like a doll comes to life. Anything that you shouldn't have.
But there's a lot of the kinds of things where the people will catch Luke sort of staring off in the near distance because he's watching Daniel offer suggestions because he doesn't know how to handle himself in a social construct.
Right,
so he's taking his cues from his imaginary buddy.
Right.
Really well acted. These guys, it's like that these guys are going to be stars.
Yeah.
Right. Because they are, one, Hollywood has meant it to be.
Right.
That these are two young actors.
They are preordained.
And that
they have a direct lineage to the Hollywood.
Royalty.
Royalty.
Patrick can act circles around his father.
Yeah.
Right. Not a particularly high threshold, but I think that he has. And he's also fortunately not built like his dad, so he's much more of a conventional leading man.
That might be the Kennedy side.
Yes.
On both counts. Both accounts.
He looks like a Kennedy.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I had a lot of fun with it.
Okay.
That's my number 2.
All right. My number 1 film starts in the 1960s with a gentleman by the name of Mercurio Arborea, who founded the Arborea Institute, which is a New Age research facility dedicated to finding a reconciliation between science and spirituality and allowing humans to move into a new age of perpetual happiness through massive intake of psychedelic drugs. This, of course, is the 2010 film Beyond the Black Rainbow, directed by Panos Cosmatos.
Do we have a collision?
No, but I'm interested to hear. I have never made it through this film.
Oh yeah, it's not easy to make it through, which does not mean it's a bad film. It's just you gotta have like a.
I haven't been patient, I guess, lately.
You gotta have 20 ounces of coffee, hot coffee, right in front of you, and sitting down and ready to go and watching it like 1:00 in the afternoon. Now, it is because the film. It does take on almost kind of a psychedelic quality in and of itself, and it's very, very dreamy. For those people that that lauded Panos Cosmatos' second film, Mandy, with Nicolas Cage, and talked about all the greatness of that film and the amazing imagery there. This one puts Mandy to shame. I mean, Mandy is like nothing compared to Beyond the Black Rainbow.
This is very much an art house meets horror movie.
It is art house meets horror movie.
Fiction.
Yeah, I think I talked about it in our science fiction podcast. But the thing, in real simple terms, because it is a relatively difficult one to explain, but in real simple terms, it's basically a film. It's an institute, the Arboria Institute, from the 1960s, and we're flashing forward into the 1980s, and they have the institute is basically on its last legs, and it's been taken over by a guy named Dr. Barry Nile, who is a very bizarre scientist, psychopath, who has been keeping a young girl, Elena, captive all these years at the institute. And the reason he's keeping her captive is because there's some indication that she has some degree of telepathy and or psychic capabilities, and so he is both trying to enhance those telepathic capabilities through massive intake of drugs, and then he's also trying to suppress them. He has this weird sort of glowing prismatic device that he uses as a way to tamp down her telepathic capabilities. And so he's kind of toying with both sides of the equation. The really interesting thing for me, and upon going back and both looking at this film and then doing a little bit of research, is that apparently a lot of this film stems from, and if you are interested in Panos Cosmatos, I would encourage you to go and listen to one of the most recent Shudder podcasts done by the Visitations podcast done by Elijah Wood, where they interview Panos Cosmatos, because he kind of gets into some of these issues, but he has a profound disdain for the baby boomer generation.
How old is Cosmatos?
I think he's like in his early 40s.
Okay, so he's an Xer then.
Yeah, I think he's probably a Gen Xer. But I mean, his whole criticism was that they were trying to come up with these sort of alternative belief systems, and it basically, like, he contends it corrupted their quest for spiritual enlightenment. And this film is really sort of the embodiment of the sort of decline of the baby boomers and how all these new age movements from the 1970s and into the early 1980s were really ultimately corrupted, and didn't really have any backbone to them. The UGO networks, which I'm not even sure what that is, a reviewer named Jordan Hoffman noted that on all these issues, he said what you're presented with is sort of up to no good new age scientists who've let their experiments who let their experiment
damn dirty hippies.
Yes, experiments with consciousness altering drugs mutate a young woman. In this case, it's Elena. Cosmatos explains why Dr. Arboria's mission to create a superhuman ultimately failed, and the failure is sort of at the hand of the Arboria Institute and their interest in sort of new age mysticism, I guess is the best way to put it. But
so apparently, new age mysticism makes Liz sleepy.
Yeah. Well, it's
You know what? He's like kind of talking to her in that hypnotizing doctor voice, and I guess it works.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Dreamy dreamscape with hypnotizing voices. I can't stay awake.
Yep. So I would encourage folks to see this, even though, if you haven't seen it after having explored Mandy, I would encourage you to go look at this one even first, because I think it's actually a far better film than Mandy, and obviously Mandy.
I think so. So I loved Mandy, and then I went to this one after, so maybe I was expecting more adrenaline.
No chainsaw fights.
So I need to adjust my
It's
expectation.
It is a sleepy rumination on psychedelic new age politics.
And so for some people, that's horrifying.
I just looked up Panos Matos, he is 45, so he is a Gen Xer.
Yep.
His father was also a director who made Rambo, First Blood Part 2.
Yep.
He made Cobra, and he made Tombstone.
Yeah.
And
allegedly,
for science fiction thriller, Leviathan.
Right.
Hey.
Yeah. And allegedly, Panos Cosmatos used the money that the father had set aside from Tombstone to finance Beyond the Black Rainbow.
Yep.
And having done Mandy, he's going to have his pick of the litter going forward.
Oh my gosh, is he ever? Is he ever? All right, Liz, what do you got for your number one on your terrible trio list?
Okay, for my
trio.
number one, I am coming more up to date. 2010, Darren Aronofsky, Black Swan.
Oh, yeah.
So Black Swan is the story of Nina, a ballerina played by Natalie Portman, who is timid, shy, wants to be perfect, and is trying to win the part of the Swan Queen in her theater's production of Swan Lake. Vincent Cassel plays the director of the company, and he is going to do a new take on Swan Lake, and the dancer is going to play the White Swan and the Black Swan. So he doesn't think she can do it because she's not got that passion and bad girl. Mm-hmm. So she's always, dressed in her pink ballerina outfit. Her makeup is perfect. She's so pretty. She's teeny tiny in this film. Natalie Portman, reportedly had talked about the diet she had to go on to play this dancer.
Yikes.
Barbara Hershey plays her mother, who is an artist and a failed ballerina because, as she reminds Nina, she got pregnant and had to have a baby instead of have her ballet career.
Crushing.
And Mila Kunis comes in and plays Lily, who is the alter ego to Natalie Portman. She has all the passion. She's not a precise dancer, but she has what the people in the company are looking for. So this kind of really starts to drive Natalie Portman a little bit insane. It also has a little bit of a evil twin doppelganger kind of vibe.
Lots of mirrors in this movie. I think very
lots
interesting
of mirrors.
Use of mirrors.
Huh.
When they show things split, because maybe it's a split personality, maybe it's not. She's definitely having broken. Some mind fractures throughout this. It also explores a lot of stuff, and I guess setting in the ballet world is super easy to do it. Winona Ryder had been the main company dancer, who is now being replaced because she's too old at 35. They show, the dancers throwing up and dealing with bulimia to be tiny and perfect and,
neuroses right there.
Yeah, all those kind of neuroses. So there's so much stuff. There's body image. There's, the quest for perfection. When she finally gets the part, the first thing she says is he picked me, not I did it. I rocked this part. It's I impressed, the company director. They're just trying to do everything for him. So it's really about the struggle for perfection that makes her crazy. But
this won Portman an Oscar, didn't it?
Did it really?
I do believe she won
Best
the
Actress.
Oscar.
I have never seen Black Swan.
She may have won Best Director. It's fantastic.
Yeah, what would you give it, Liz? I know we haven't reviewed it on the Scariest Things podcast.
I would give it definitely probably 4.5 maybe.
Woo!
Yeah, no, it's
solid.
I love
it.
It's gorgeous.
All right, I'm gonna go watch it now. I haven't seen it. When it came out, it was I think it was billed as a sort of psychological film, not a psychological
it's got
horror
some
film.
Definite horror.
Sure.
There's some blood. Someone dies, so I'm going to say at least goes that way.
Okay.
There is a lot of body horror, especially picking at her skin. She has a lot of kind of nervous picking, and when dancers wear those point shoes, they have a lot of toenail problems. So there's that. So
I'm now covering my eyes. When we did the speed round a couple weeks ago, why didn't you pick this for your best choreography?
I should have.
Zing. It was your category.
I should have. I totally should have. I was actually thinking of that today as I watched John Wick 3, and I was like, "Hey, this has got some good choreography." But so Natalie Portman did win the Academy Award for Best Actress for this one.
Wow. Okay, I'm going to go back and watch.
Yeah,
Black Swan.
it's worth a watch, Mike.
It is really, really good.
Although I think it is sort of on the cusp of horror or not.
Sure.
But it's a great film.
Yeah.
So
it is. I put it into the horror because there are some more. I don't know. It wouldn't sit solidly in the thriller. It's definitely walking the line. It's straying to the thriller side, but it has definitely more horror elements than a lot of psychological.
It goes a little bit more fantastical. Slightly. It's not full on supernatural, but it does have a weirdness factor to it.
Right.
That trips it over more towards horror than straight thriller. I'll claim it also because I like to be able to say, hey, a horror movie got an Oscar.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. No, it sounds an awful lot like the 2019 film that premiered on Netflix, The Perfection, which
Allison Williams.
Yes, Allison Williams, swap out ballet, insert violin virtuosos, and you've got kind of a similar type film.
Competitive to the point of violent competition.
Right.
Yeah, but whereas I would give The Perfection a 2.5.
Okay. I haven't seen it yet.
I would go with you on that too, Liz.
Yeah, for a 2.5 or 3 for The Perfection. I enjoyed it, but there's a reason this one was up for Academy Awards and that one was straight to Netflix. Nothing wrong with that.
Zing.
Come on, Netflix. Amazing. You can do better. We've talked about this already.
All right. So
about the silence.
Yeah. Your number one, Eric.
So I have to include a Lovecraft film.
Okay.
For my number one, and I think this is I think the best adaptation of a psychological Lovecraft film. This is the 1995 film In the Mouth of Madness.
Oh yeah,
starring Sam Neill as a private investigator who has been hired by. So this is John Trent, is Sam Neill's character, and he's been hired by Jackson Hargrave, played by Charlton Heston, in one of his very rare horror movie appearances. I think in his long storied career, he's in 2, I think.
Wow.
But
and you're not counting the Omega Man or Soylent Green.
Or Planet of the Apes. No, that's science fiction.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. Omega Man's got a kind of a horror quality. It's on the edge.
Yeah,
anyway, sorry, we're not talking about Charlton Heston.
No, this is
because who doesn't want to talk about Charlton Heston? Come on.
But he plays the Arcane Publishing, which is a great publisher synonym for something like this.
Yep.
There's so many layers of referential. John Carpenter. This is a John Carpenter film.
Right.
And he direct homages to H.P. Lovecraft and Stephen King.
Yep.
Because he's being hired, this private investigator, to find a Sutter Kane, who is essentially a Stephen King anagram or analogy. He's been lost. They're trying. It's like, we got to find him because we got a big book coming out and we got to promote this thing. Go find him. And there's something very strange going on with this town, which is sort of a Derry-like town, right? Where it's a weird little New England community. So Sam Neill and Julie Carmen playing Linda, the Arcane Publishing editor, they head out to go try and find Sutter Kane, and they stumble into a village that is in a state of flux, I guess you could say.
Yeah. I think that's fair.
That they go into they check into a hotel. They start looking around. They start asking questions, and the townies are, no, we haven't seen him. Oh, you're looking just like, why are you asking? We don't want to talk about Sutter Kane. But then you start to realize that they are all under sort of his influence, and that there are elements of his book that start becoming real. And when they try and get out, it's like, okay, well, we're not making any headway. Let's head back to the city. And the road that leads out goes into the clouds, and it's like it disappears. It's a literal road to nowhere. They're trapped in this bubble of this fantastical creation of Sutter Kane. And then the layers of veneer get peeled away. You get this. It goes full on cosmic. The innkeeper turns into a squid monster thing. And actually, it was kind of neat that they refer to the hotel as the Pickman House, which is a classic H.P. Lovecraft thing, a Pickman's model. It's with a lot of Lovecraft stuff, it's there's short stories, and then you take a lot of liberties with it. Certainly, Stuart Gordon had done that. It was like, I'm going to take the Reanimator and make it. It was like, and it goes completely gonzo. This one, it borrows a lot of Lovecraft's affinity for creepy tomes that open portals to and things beyond your mortal's comprehension.
Right.
And
that's where the opium comes in.
Yeah, and this is a mad
and his love of Nazism.
Yeah, and the whole he's definitely a. In this era, he'd be a red hat guy.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah. I think he would. I think it's safe to say.
So he was a bit of a xenophobe.
Yep.
But there were a lot of questions about as John Trent goes through this process of seeing, he's in denial. He thinks that this the crazy mob that's outside, they're just being hired, that this is a stunt put on by the publisher.
But the film gets crazier and crazier and crazier as it goes on. Because there's the one scene, I did not put this when we talked about our favorite moments of horror in episode number 1 of the Scariest Things podcast. I didn't put this on the list, but it's probably my top 10. There's a scene where he's out in the road to nowhere, and there's the old lady on the bicycle, and then the woman is flipped upside down, distorted, doing kind of the Reagan walk down the stairs from The Exorcist kind of routine, and it's all these completely insane injects thrown at you all at once that you just it's really difficult to process, and it is scary as hell.
Yeah, and there are some things like that. Reminds me of the early 20th century impressionist like Salvador Dali. That's not impressionist. What surrealist, or Magritte, or
no, it's got a really surreal quality to it. And arguably, it's probably Carpenter's most surreal
artistic piece.
It's his most artistic piece. It's the piece that's a lot less linear than all of his other stories.
Yeah, and the madness this one unveils all around you.
Right.
And it ends, of course, with Sam Neill in a straitjacket, laughing hysterically and by himself, and watching a movie, and just of all those things unfold, and then the gateways to another dimension, and monsters come pouring out of the gate. It's all. Yeah, it is top level Lovecraft.
It is.
Indeed. So the madness. So that is my number 1.
All right, let's recap really quick. Liz, what were your 3 on your terrifying trio list for Psychological Horror Podcast episode 77?
It is. I started with Repulsion, 1965, directed by Roman Polanski. Then Tarsem Singh's 2000 film, The Cell, starring Jennifer Lopez. And rounding it out with 2010's Black Swan, directed by Darren Aronofsky.
All right. Eric, what do you got?
I started off, my number 3 was Jacob's Ladder from 1990, directed by Adrian Lyne, who's maybe prompting us to do sexy thrillers.
Sexy thrillers.
Then I also did the current movie, Daniel Isn't Real, directed by Adam Egypt Mortimer. And I closed out with the John Carpenter weirdo classic, In the Mouth of Madness from 1995.
All right. I started with Sisters, the Brian De Palma film from 1972, moved on to Unsane, the 2018 psychological horror film from Steven Soderbergh, and then finished up with the 2010 Panos Cosmatos film Beyond the Black Rainbow. Let's go grave digging.
Okay.
Liz, what do you got for grave digging this week? Anything?
Okay, sure. Yep. This is kind of, I hate to do things that not everybody can participate in, but maybe people will be able to participate in it.
We did the Blair Witch thing, so this is...
Yeah. Oh, that's true. Yeah. Well, I got to go see a musical comedy production last night at a local place here in New Orleans, and it was called Silence, the Musical, the unauthorized comedy parody of Silence of the Lambs. And it is absolutely hilarious. This debuted in 2005 at the New York City Fringe Festival. And so a local production company here was, I think, one of the first that's been given the right to put it on with a cast that's not the original touring production. So if you are in New Orleans, I think you have one more weekend to see it.
Okay.
And it's at the New Orleans Art Center. And if you're not, look up Silence the Musical online. You can probably find some of the songs that are... They're hilarious. I'm not going to say they're too full of curse words to say on the podcast, even though
Liz,
some of them are dirty.
I thought where you were going with this was that it was a parody of the film The Silence, this year's Netflix.
Oh no,
no one would go see that.
I thought, oh my God, that's too fast. You can't bang out a parody musical of a film that came out in 2019.
Silence of the Lambs is a benchmark.
Oh yeah.
It really is. And this production is hilarious, and it's won some off-Broadway awards, not the show, not the group that did it here, obviously. But so check it out, look online, and you could probably see if anybody is coming to your area doing this, and I bet you could probably YouTube some of the numbers. So my favorite one was Buffalo Bill singing a song called "Are You About a Size 14?" where he's looking for girls to kidnap. So
nice.
It's pretty hilarious.
Does Hannibal Lecter sing with a mask on?
He doesn't sing with the mask on, but he does have the mask on and talks through the mask, but no singing in the mask.
Okay.
All right. I will go with a little piece of grave digging I discovered today. Apparently, this was not quite common knowledge, although it has become common knowledge upon second and third and fourth viewings of this summer's film Midsummer. People have started to discover that amongst all of the very, very psychedelic elements of the film. Throughout the film, if you have seen Midsummer, and this is not a spoiler, there are many pieces and parts of the film where stuff is incredibly distorted. The trees move around significantly in a very unnatural way. And if you look online for this, you will see it now. In the film, which is not a spoiler in and of itself, but the main character, Danny, she is troubled by the fact that her sister had recently killed herself by putting basically putting an exhaust pipe in her, not an exhaust pipe, well, a hose to an exhaust pipe.
Yeah, hose to the exhaust pipe.
From carbon monoxide poisoning.
Carbon monoxide poisoning from a vehicle. You can actually if you look, they have stills of it online now. He put it in the trees. So she's dealing with all this crap in her head. He's showing it to you in the trees. It's a still of the sister killing herself behind them as the cult, as the cult sort of reaches fever pitch in the film, and they have anointed Danny as kind of the new leader of the cult. Behind all of this, you see the sister killing herself again.
That is, Ari Aster is becoming a director where you have to watch his movies more than once.
Oh my God!
Oh, for sure.
Is it ever? Because like with The Exorcist, where you see the flashes of Pazuzu, you see, they do a lot of, and there's like a lot of like subliminal stuff, and that was really cool and pretty cutting edge at the time. What William Friedkin was doing. This is kind of a whole, as Eric points out, this is a whole different level of subliminal visuals, and you really do have to watch this stuff multiple times and look at it through many, many different filters, because he's throwing a lot of crap at you, and we're only discovering pieces and parts of it just now.
Wow.
Yeah. So what do you got, Eric?
Okay, this is a little bit of internal propaganda.
It's not internal anymore. This is external.
Oh, no, that's not what you think. This is. I want to redirect people to episode 76, which we just did, which I think we kind of snuck in an extra podcast in the middle of the week.
Yes.
Because we were interviewing.
Which is why I screwed up on the number.
Yeah. David Dostmalchin. Hey, David, we know you're listening and that you're a fan, and we're a fan of yours, so it's an extra little pitch here. Just to remind folks out there that there's a comic called Count Crowley, Reluctant Midnight Monster Hunter,
and it is awesome.
It is. It's
illustrated
so much
by
fun.
Lucas Kettner, who is one hell of an illustrator.
Do we know if Lucas is he a Portlander?
He is a Portlander. Yeah.
We're gonna have to get him on.
Yeah, I talked to him. I talked to him after we talked to David. Yeah, and he is a great guy, amazing illustrator. If you're
Witch
a fan
Doctor.
if you're a fan of creepy or eerie or anything from Tales of the Crypt, all that kind of crap, he illustrates very much in that vein and illustrates in a really, really beautiful way.
Yeah, no, he channels that old EC vibe so well.
100%.
But anyways, it's one of the I think sometimes it bears suggestions to our fans out there, because we know that sometimes you'll spot something where it's like, I'm not sure who that person is on the interview.
Right.
It is. I think it was the most fun we've had doing an interview, an outside interview yet, and
the most fun we've had without Liz.
Oh, thanks, guys.
Yeah.
It was such a great interview, and he really is like, it's that guy. Yeah, he is one of those actors. He's in so much stuff, and personally, Prisoners.
Yeah.
I said it online. I'll say it again. It almost made my list for this, but it is much. It's not horror. It's thriller.
It's definitely a thriller.
100% thriller,
And a
but it
revenge
is a
movie.
bar-setting thriller, and it is fantastic.
Yeah, listen to the interview we did with him. I mean, because he is somebody who is firmly entrenched in the horror world. I mean, he's got a film coming out later this year called Teachers. He obviously did the Belko Experiment. He did, Twin Peaks. He's done lots and lots of horror and horror. Yeah, Bird Box. He's done lots of horror and horror adjacent stuff. Great actor, great guy.
Yeah. Then and the last little tidbit I'm going to do is that a Patreon shout out. We have thank you to Dan Bradbury, personal friend, as many of our Patreon contributors are, but he's now joined our Scariest family. So as is you're right, as a new Patreon contributor, you get the shout out. And dude, so thank you so much.
Yes. Good job.
Thank you.
And thank you.
We will be. There will be some great things for our Patreon contributors to participate in that we'll be announcing here shortly. And if you're curious about how to join that, go onto our website and look us up. Anything that you do to help us out will allow us to broaden our reach and get you more stuff. So
Yes.
with that,
You need more stuff.
Yeah.
Everyone needs more stuff.
Mike, you got a tagline?
Yeah, speaking of more stuff,
Yeah, so we're running long, but we'll go ahead and
this is the tagline.
Those are out.
This is the tagline from the 1972 Brian De Palma film Sisters. What the devil hath joined together, let no man cut asunder.
Oh, that's great.